How did a country with over 17,000 islands become the largest Muslim nation in the world? Let's find out. As-salamu Alaykum everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Desi, a revert Muslima from Lithuania. Since I am going to visit Indonesia really soon, I thought that to react to this fascinating video, how Indonesia became the largest Muslim country in the world, would be super interesting for me, and I hope that also for you. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I am not history expert. History wasn't my favorite subject in school, but I find it really fascinating to learn it now about how Islam spread to these islands and became such a significant part of Indonesia. Nowadays, it's super easy to learn about the cultures and the religion because we have the internet. We can see instantly what is happening anywhere in the world. But back then, the people didn't have that luxury. Can you imagine? It would take years to travel to new places, exchange ideas, and spread religions like Islam. It's truly remarkable how this all happened, and I'm excited to learn more about it with you today. Indonesia, as we know it today, is home to the largest Muslim population in the world, with over 200 million Muslims. But how Islam made its way to this vast archipelago? Indonesia is made up of more than 17,000 islands, and historically, it was known for its rich trade routes connecting Asia, the Middle East, and beyond. Muslim traders, scholars, and even travelers played its significant roles in introducing Islam to these islands. But it wasn't just through trade. Islam spread there in a peaceful, organic way, often through the cultural exchange, local rulers adopting the faith, and the influence of Islamic scholars who came to teach. It's incredible to think how this early interaction shaped Indonesia into a Muslim majority country that it is today. After this basic information, let's start the video.
In the Western conception, the religion of Islam often begins and ends in the arid deserts of the Middle East. Despite this, in the modern era, the nation with the single highest population of Muslims in the world is not Saudi Arabia, Syria, Iraq, or Egypt. Instead, the largest Islamic country on earth is a steamy land of tropical jungles, terraced rice fields, and blistering monsoon winds, located over 7,500 miles away from the land of Islam's birth. Deep in the maritime heart of Southeast Asia, the island nation of Indonesia is home to over 279 million people, 86% of which are Muslim. Islam is a religion that was famously spread by the sword. Yet the armies of the Caliphate that carried the faith from Spain to Pakistan never stepped foot on Indonesian soil. This begs the question, how did a tropical archipelago traditionally dominated by Hindu-Buddhist kings become the most populous Muslim-majority nation on earth? To properly contextualize how Islam reigned supreme in Indonesia, we must first provide a brief survey of the region's history prior to its arrival. The modern country of Indonesia is part of a wider politico-geographical region known as the Nusantara Archipelago, a massive chain of over 17,000 islands stretched out over 5,000 kilometers of ocean. Nusantara is home to over 300 unique peoples with their own culture and language, most of whom belong to the Austronesian ethno-linguistic group. The Austronesians were prehistoric humanity's greatest seafarers, arriving upon the tropical isles of Southeast Asia aboard sturdy catamarans and outrigger canoes over 3,500 years ago as part of a multi-millennia migration that began on Taiwan a millennium earlier and ended on the islands of Polynesia 2 millennia later. Throughout the medieval era, the Austronesian peoples of Nusantara channeled the seafaring prowess of their ancestors to forge some of the most prosperous maritime merchant kingdoms in all of pre-colonial Asia. These kingdoms were largely concentrated on the islands of Sumatra and Java, which served as the gateway to the most important shipping lane in the world, the Malacca Strait. Since ancient times, the Malacca Strait has been the central nexus of the maritime Silk Road, which connected the Celestial Empire of China to the ancient civilizations of India, Persia, Arabia, and beyond. By mastering the shipping lanes that connected numerous extremely wealthy empires across Asia, the rulers of Java and Sumatra became extremely wealthy themselves. As the monsoon winds blew foreign traders onto Nusantara's shores, so too did they blow in foreign philosophies, sciences, political principles, and religions. While the Austronesians were originally an animist people, constant contact with the civilizations of India saw them slowly adopt Hinduism and Buddhism as their two main faiths. By the 8th century AD, the rulers of kingdoms like Mataram and Srivijaya had become fully Indianized, with their kings portraying themselves as avatars of Hindu gods like Vishnu and Shiva, and styling themselves as Devaraja, an ancient Sanskrit word meaning god-king. Grand monuments were consecrated to glorify their divinely mandated reigns, such as Borobudur, which to this day remains the largest Buddhist structure in the world, and Prambanan, the second largest Hindu temple in Southeast Asia. If India was the place from which the kings of Nusantara received their spiritual legitimacy, then China was the place where they received their political legitimacy. It was an ancient custom that foreign kingdoms wishing to do commerce with China had to swear nominal fealty to the Chinese emperor, something that Nusantara's Hindu-Buddhist kings played along with in order to gain access to Chinese riches. Throughout the medieval era, successful rulers in Sumatra and Java often underlined their entitlement to rule by demonstrating China's approval. The zenith of Nusantara's Hindu-Buddhist era was marked by the rise of the Majapahit, a massive seafaring empire which emerged out of the chaos of the Mongol invasion of Java in the 14th century, and united the vast majority of the archipelago under its rule. However, as the Majapahit rose in prominence, so too did an alternative religion begin growing exponentially in popularity, challenging the divine authority of the empire's Hindu god-kings. This new faith came in the form of melodious muezzin, proclaiming the call of prayer from the peaks of minarets. The origins of Islam lie a world away from tropical Nusantara, in the arid sand dunes of Arabia. There, in the 7th century CE, a caravan merchant received a vision from God and changed the world forever. Within 2 generations, the successors of the Prophet Muhammad had stormed out of the Arabian Peninsula in one of the fastest and most successful conquest sprees in world history, forging a caliphate that spanned from Iberia in the west to the Indus in the east. As the Islamic Caliphate was now the dominant power of Middle Eurasia, it now controlled the ports which made up the western end of the maritime Silk Road. From those ports, Muslim merchants from Persia and Arabia set forth along the same routes their ancestors had for centuries, blowing eastward along monsoon winds in search of silk, porcelain, and spice. As the winds of commerce carried these entrepreneurs further than the armies of the Caliphate had ever tread, it also pollinated their faith along the trade routes they followed, with communities of foreign Muslim merchants sprouting up in coastal areas throughout Southeast and East Asia, including Sumatra, Java, and even China. Indeed, by the time of China's Middle Tang dynasty in the 8th and 9th centuries AD, sizable Muslim communities had developed in the thriving port cities of the southern province of Guangzhou. As China had long exerted heavy political influence upon the kings of Nusantara, the Chinese Muslim community would later play a big role in introducing Islam to the region. By the 10th century AD, the economic influence that Muslim traders enjoyed on the maritime Silk Road had increased exponentially, to the point where local rulers began converting to their religion. The first known ruler in Nusantara to embrace the faith of Mecca was an Achenese king in the late 13th century named Merasilu, who ruled over an enigmatic state known as the Samudera Pasai Sultanate on the northern tip of Sumatra. Very little is known about this medieval ruler. However, his status as the first Muslim ruler in Nusantara is supported by a certain Italian adventurer named Marco Polo, who visited the northern Sumatran port city of Perlac in 1292. Among the many colourful anecdotes in his travelogue, which make mention of cannibals in the hills and native men with monkey tails, Polo remarks that the locals of Perlac, who used to be Hindus, had recently converted to Islam. While the Samudera Pasai Sultanate was probably the first Muslim state in Nusantara, it was far from the last. The tipping point when Islam began to outpace Hinduism and Buddhism as the dominant religion in the archipelago occurred in the early 15th century, with the founding of the Sultanate of Malacca.
I mean, it is not difficult to see the differences from Hinduism or Buddhism and Islam. I mean, if I'm an Hindu or a Buddhist, I discover Islam and Islamic values, I would definitely revert to Islam. It is not difficult at all if you have a little bit of brain and some human values, a bit of logic as well. You will see that Hinduism couldn't be the true.
In the year 1389, the mighty Majapahit Empire was entering its twilight years. Its greatest king, Hayam Wuruk, had passed away after a marathon 49-year reign, and in the wake of his death, many vassal rulers in Nusantara's outlying islands now sought to break free of their Javanese overlords. One of these rulers was Parameswara, the Hindu Raja of Singapura, a precursor to the modern city-state of Singapore. Upon Hayam Wuruk's death, Parameswara repudiated his vassalage to the Majapahit throne. In response, Majapahit forces invaded Parameswara's islands and drove him from his city.
Just a quick question. Since I made this video about the new capital of Indonesia, Nusantara, I'm quite ignorant at this moment right now, but did Nusantara existed in that century with this name, with the name of Nusantara? If someone loves history and knows, please comment below.
Indeed, in the decades that followed, as the Majapahit Empire became mired in civil wars and rebellions, the Malacca Sultanate quickly outpaced its main Hindu-Buddhist rival as the primary trading hub in the region. Malacca was not the only place where the Grand Admiral Zheng He probably precipitated the advance of Islam. Indeed, as the great Ming treasure ships followed the ancient maritime Silk Road from China to India, Persia, Arabia, and back again, it picked up merchants, courtiers, and dignitaries from across the Muslim world. On the northern coast of Java, the home island of the Majapahit state, Zheng He helped to establish multinational Islamic communities composed of Chinese, Malays, Arabs, Bengalis, and Gujaratis, diverse in language and custom, yet united by their Muslim faith. Over time, these Muslim communities grew in influence, converting many of the local Javanese communities within their orbit. The increasing popularity of Islam in Java hastened the Majapahit's decline, for the kings of Majapahit derived their right to rule by virtue of being divine avatars in the Hindu tradition, an idea rejected by the Muslim faith. In 1475, the growing Muslim population in northern Java coalesced into a unified state, with the creation of the first Islamic state in Java, the Sultanate of Demak. The exact origins of Demak are unclear, but its founding is traditionally attributed to a man named Raden Patah, a Javanese noble with blood ties to the Majapahit royal line. As the power and prestige of the increasingly moribund Majapahit continued to erode away, the Demak Sultanate advanced, waging war on the declining Hindu-Buddhist establishment. By 1527, the Islamic Sultanate overran the enfeebled remnants of the Majapahit realm, forcing the last of its Hindu rulers to flee to Bali, and putting out the final embers of an empire that had once dominated the entirety of maritime Southeast Asia.
And now I can understand why Bali is Hindu, or the majority of the population in Bali are Hindus.
Although the Demak Sultanate replaced the Majapahit as the master of Java, the Demak royal family regarded themselves as descendants of Majapahit, continuing to use old Majapahit symbols, like the eight-pointed sun, only modifying them to remove any Hindu associations. This exemplifies that the rise of Islam in Java was not brought about by foreign invaders, but by people with deep ancestral ties to the land, representing not a new world order, but the continuation of the island's native culture with a reworked religious framework. The Demak Sultanate reached the apex of its power during the reign of Sultan Trenggana, who presided over the military expansion of his realm and by extension the Islamic faith into southern Sumatra and Borneo. After Trenggana's death, Demak lost its supremacy, fragmenting into several smaller sultanates such as Cirebon, Gresik Surabaya, Kalinyamat, and Banten. Meanwhile, in Sumatra, the Islamic sultanates of Johor, Aceh, and the aforementioned Malacca thrived. Back in Java, the Mataram Sultanate was formed in 1598, quickly becoming the dominant political power on the island. By the beginning of the 17th century, the Islamic model of statehood had become by far the most popular in maritime Southeast Asia, with local rulers and their followers converting in droves. By around 1650, the majority of the Nusantara archipelago was Muslim. The lone holdout of Hindu-Buddhist statehood in the Nusantara archipelago was the island of Bali, which retained a Hindu majority population, and despite a modern influx of drunk Australians, still does to this day. Now that we have completed a broad timeline of Islam's rise to prominence in the islands of Indonesia, let us take a break from the when and provide a more in-depth discussion of the why. What made Islam so attractive to the people of Nusantara that within a few centuries it went from a minority religion of foreign traders to the dominant religion across the entire archipelago?
I could say a few reasons why an Hindu would choose Islam instead Hinduism. Firstly, the basics that Islam teaches us. The cleanliness, no degeneracy, friendliness, to be just with everyone, kind with people, the modesty. Among all of these things that an Hindu in that century, even nowadays, just didn't know all these things, didn't have these values. Also, of course, the peace in the heart. So, of course, if a person sees all of it in other people, the traders or travelers or the scholars, so definitely these values are so different from what the person used to see. No doubt all of it would make a person think, why is it so? How this person is so different and has these values? Not only the appearance, the peace you see in this person, but also all this knowledge and kindness of the Muslims that arrived there in that century. So definitely these are the reasons why a person in that century would revert to Islam. Look, the ones who studied the teachings of Hinduism definitely know what their gods are saying and teaching. So if an Hindu king see different teachings, of course are going to accept a superior message. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts, and if you are an Indonesian watching this video, comment below what makes you being a Muslim. Why are you still a Muslim? Also, did you know your own history? And if there's something you would like to share with all of us, with this beautiful YouTube fam community we have here, comment interesting facts, or maybe your grandma, your grandfather told you about. Comment new video suggestions as well. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one. Allah Hafiz.